It's already time for our first speaker, who's Mina Mirhosseini. And if you remember those texts that Marina said she's not gonna read, I'm gonna read. So now, Mina Mirhosseini is a junior level designer at IO Interactive, working on Project 007, knowing how challenging it can be to start a career in today's climate. She has a fresh perspective of being a designer today. From a young age, Mina passionately pursued her dream of becoming a game developer, exploring various disciplines, from art to coding, before discovering her true calling in level design. Her journey reflects not only her dedication to mastering her craft, but also her commitment to helping others navigate their own paths in the world of game development. So, uh, welcome her on stage. And
Thank you. Where do I find my PowerPoint?
her talk is titled From Blueprint to Reality, Finding the Confidence to Design. Thank you.
Where do I find my PowerPoint?
Uh,
Thank you. Is the mic on?
yeah, I think
So, good morning, everyone. My name is Mina Mirhosseini, and I'm a junior level designer at IO Interactive. Today, I'm very excited to share my journey with you guys. From my early education days to my current role as a level designer. I will also be offering some tricks and insights for those of you who's looking to pursue a similar career. So as for right now, I work on Project 007. Here's some of my portfolio work and things I've done in the past. Before IO Interactive, I went to the game assembly for level design, and even before that, I went to upper secondary school with a game development base, learning C#. So let's start off very broad. What is level design? A very common question. Some statements I've heard before has been things like, it's just pushing cubes around, or seems like the easiest part of game development. And lastly, came from someone I worked with for 2 years, I still don't understand what your discipline does. Well, then let's break it down. Level design is structured up by 3 pillars. This was something that I learned the first day of TJ. We have art, tech, and design. So art is the visual aspect. It's everything from composition to logical spaces. It's not about how things look, but more on how they deliver. Then we have the tech aspect, which is everything from scripting, prototyping, and maintaining performance. And lastly, we have design, which is the actual content, which you can find everywhere. Design is what answers the whys and hows. So, getting back to the question, what is level design? It's very hard to define with one sentence. I asked my colleagues, leads, seniors, intermediate, and they all agreed it's very hard to explain. I got one phrase that I thought was really good, and it's that level designers manifest experiences. Level design is the practice of planning and building gameplay spaces within a video game. So what do I do from day to day? Oh, going back. Thank you. So my days mostly contains of meetings, feedback, doing layouts, blockouts, scripting for prototyping. But if you asked another level designer at another company, you might get a completely different answer. There's many different types of level designers. To name a few, we have world designers, tech designers, narrative designers. World designers create hour-to-hour gameplay and focus more on the big brushstrokes, focusing on world building, capturing the essence of the world, like the Hunter Call of the Wild. Then we have tech design, which is their job is to make a level designer's job easier. They create tools, they prototype and script. At other companies, that would simply just be called a programmer. But it's all depending on like size of company, genre, and all of those sort of things. When I started out, I didn't know exactly what kind of level designer I wanted to be. I just knew what spoke to me and what didn't. It wasn't until I was making my portfolio I could gather all my past experience of making levels and games that I could calculate what I found the most fun. At IO Interactive, it's a very strong focus on design, but also on the tech aspect and give us freedom to script a lot, which was right up my alley. So, when I was around 16, 17 years old, I was in my second year of programming, and that's when I realized that I wanted to become a level designer. So we had a small game project course spanning over 2 weeks, and instead of doing the usual coding, I decided that I wanted to do level design. But in the start, I felt a great doubt. I feel like I was viewed as less intelligent for branching away from code and doing design, which is of course not true. It was all in my head. So starting the project, I had a hard time just getting out a first draft because I wanted to be seen as this respected designer. I wanted to create perfection from the start. And that resulted in me becoming a really passive part of that group, not really showing any stuff that I did. So a few days left of the assignment, and I finally got people to playtest my level. And all of a sudden, all the creative ideas got flooding. Just by letting them play my level created a discussion, and it created feedback. All of those things that I removed by working isolated and alone. So, what are the takeaways from this story? Spend less time on theory and more on practice. As much as we like to think, we also have to get our things out in order to progress. And how can we do that? Simply by maybe paper design, blocking out, talking to your teammates about it. And secondly, having a perfect design from the start is nearly impossible. And I know some of you might take this as a challenge, but you will realize very quickly it's very hard to have a perfect design from the start. Instead, get something really bad out and then iterate on that. And after that, you keep iterating. So from this story, you might understood that I was quite insecure within my craft. So how do you really gain confidence? Where do you begin and all that kind of stuff? Once again, I asked my colleagues about it, seniors, everything, and I was like, oh, how did you gain confidence within the industry? And I got almost every time the same answer. And the obvious answer is, of course, experience. Yeah. Experience builds confidence. But what if you are like me, for example? You don't really have much experience. Where can you begin? I would start off by being honest with yourself. Be honest with what you know and don't know, so that instead of becoming defensive, you are curious. And secondly, it's very important to know that design is subjective. What might be perfect design in someone's eyes might be really bad for someone else. You could create a masterpiece, but then if it doesn't match the tone and the direction of the game, it might change. And that's not personal at all, and that's very important to kind of understand. Because it's a very, level design is a very passionate discipline, but at the end of the day, it's a job, and we shouldn't stress out too much about creating the perfect thing, stuff like that. So if you look at Dark Souls 1, oh, it's very bright, you might see it. We come to Firelink Shrine, and when you turn towards the graveyard, you will get attacked by skeletons, and that's super unfair. In a normal AAA game, this would be considered bad design. But in Dark Souls, it's the complete opposite. It's what makes the game exciting. So design is very contextual and subjective. And then lastly, to gain confidence, you need to, that's Firelink Shrine. You need to learn from failure, the scary word. In order to grow, we need to step out of our comfort zone and try new things and maybe push yourself a bit to know what you can do and what you cannot do. So yeah. So where do you even start? Let's say you really want to get into level design, but you don't know really where to begin. So I have some resources and methods for you guys. First of all, there's really great books out there, but I would say focus on practice. Download an engine that you're comfortable with. In my case, I really recommend Unreal Engine, as it is very level design friendly. You only need a cube. Don't get what is called blinded by all fancy asset packs. We don't need that. So I would say start off with downloading an engine. Blender is also a great free tool if you get tired of the cube and maybe need a polygon car in your game. Then you have Blender. I'm not a big fan of 3D modeling, but it does the work. And then we have modding, something that myself I'm not very experienced with, but I know a lot of great designers started out with modding. So there's a lot of editors like Quake and Doom and Half-Life 2, Portal, all those kind of things. And then you already are comfortable with the game rules. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. And then we have PureRef. PureRef is like artists use it, but we use it too. It's where you can collect reference pictures in one area. I think it's very handy. And then, of course, YouTube. This is more theory, but there's a lot of great GDC talks. You might find your favorite game, and then they break it down on how they designed it. And there's also great tutorials in case you get stuck with your engine. And then we have, in terms of communities, I remember when this was Twitter, then it's probably like the best place for level designers to meet. I started out on Instagram. It was a really bad idea. I didn't find any people that did what I did. And some great hashtags are Blocktober. It's very similar to Inktober, but it's for level designs. Happens every year. And yeah, of course, hashtag level design. And it's a really great way to just put your things out there and let people give you feedback or just look at it, just to come out of your shell a bit. And then we have Discord. I've heard that the Design Den is a great community to get feedback and things like that. Then we have methods. So I'm going to go through a short recipe that I think it worked with me, but I think you should do it over and over again until you're comfortable. So start with identifying your starting point, then jump straight into creating. No pre-prod, no pre-production. If you haven't done the pipeline enough, it's very hard to estimate how long things are going to take, and just do things that get you inspired and going. Nothing big, focus on creating small things. Then I would start iterating, and then reflect, and then repeat. The thing you learn with this, by doing it this way, is you learn the pipeline. And that's almost the most important thing. And then with time, you get better with design as well. But as a starter, it's very important to just know your strengths, know your weaknesses, and repeat the process. So with identifying your starting point, I want you to rank yourself within these 3 categories. So which one do you have at first, second, and last? This was something we did the first day at TGA, and it's a great way to see your starting point. So if, let's say, your lowest pillar was art, then I would recommend finding real-life references and try to recreate that only using the cube. Or I would try to get in-game of your space and see if you can make the composition more interesting, again using real-life references. Will moving the pillar a bit to left give you a better reveal, etc., etc. Then by tech, it can get complicated real fast, but I would look at your gameplay space and then identify your absolute musts. And now we're not talking about player template and that advanced programming. I'm talking about maybe a simple button or a sliding door. And then you make that, and in the next project, you don't copy paste it. You make it again and again and again until it's stuck in your head. And when you learn the basics of it, all of a sudden you can create a lot of other things. And then if your lowest pillar is design, I would start questioning everything. What is your intention? Why are you doing things a certain way? And that kind of stuff. So now you've done this over and over again. You have lots of great small projects, and now you want to try to make a bigger piece. So I'm going to show an example of a portfolio piece I did, and it's also a process we use out in the game industry. So you start with pre-production. Please don't read these notes, very embarrassing. And then you write down, okay, what is your philosophy in your level? What are your initial ideas? I will probably also include a pure ref in this, with the pictures, give yourself a mood. And then I really enjoyed making a sprint plan as well, so you can hold between the time frames. So you estimate all the tasks you will need and how long they will take. And then when you're happy with your pre-prod, you do layout. And now when I say layout, I don't mean a pretty one like this. I just couldn't find my paper design. And you shouldn't spend too much time on this, because it can turn out that it's entirely different in a 3D space. This is just to get down your ideas. And then to the fun part, and that's blocking out the best part. And here we're thinking fast to scale, only using cube. The thing with only using cube, it's about seeing the design for what it is. We don't want to hide it with pretty things, and we want it to be easy to iterate on. When I was beginning and I worked in Unreal Engine, I instantly downloaded an asset pack, and then I fell in love, but the design was really bad, but at least it looked pretty. So yeah, block out, this is probably the longest process. You should always iterate on it. And then after the blockout part, this maybe you do at the same time, but it's scripting your needs. If you're modding, it's probably something else. But in my case, I started to script out the puzzles and all like the core features to make it representable. And then after scripting, we do the polish, which is what you do right before release. And that's things like making the level more readable, adding colors that's easy for the eye to read the level, and things like that. And then it's release. And if you did your pre-prod correctly, it will become even easier on creating your website. When you have a portfolio, you kind of have to always, at least for level design, you have to explain your intention behind everything. If you just have a trailer and pictures, it's hard to know what you're really judging. We want to know what you've been thinking and how you've been doing it. So yeah, so now you are great at doing projects alone. How can you then work in a group? I feel like this is the most important part in game development, because we work in teams. So some good traits to have would be understanding each discipline. If you know what they do, you know their limits and capabilities, and it will also be much easier to communicate with them. It was a time that I was really scared of talking to artists, because I was like, no, they're too complicated, they know what they're doing, I can't ask for anything. But if you understand what they do, it will become easier to collaborate. And then, of course, open-mindedness, dependability, be a trustable person, and respecting each other's time. And also listen and be humble. So yeah, that's my short little speak. Thank you, everyone. And here are some of my contact information in case you have more questions.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I can hand over the microphone if you have any questions. If you have any questions in the audience, or if anyone online has questions. We don't have questions. Okay, maybe I can start with a question. So
Mm?
you mentioned some tools, right? And then you also mentioned that you used Instagram first, and then also that you mentioned that you used Unreal. So maybe if you could tell us what tools you started with and if it changed during your career. Yes.
In terms of engine,
Yes,
or
and you also mentioned Blender. So tools, any tools that you could recommend and what you started with and what you're using now.
yeah. So I was a programmer before. So I was initially in just Visual Studio, and then Unity, which I didn't like that at all. And then when I wanted to start with something that I thought was more user friendly, I used CryEngine, which was great. But then when I started the game assembly, that's when I really used Unreal Engine. And yeah, as I said, I think it's a really powerful engine to do whatever you want. And then Blender was also part of kind of like my upper secondary school and TGA, just to get an understanding for creating 3D spaces, things like that. And yeah, I wanted to join a community. So yeah, I started off on Instagram, but yeah, they don't hang out there. I would say yeah, Twitter or X is the best. Did that kind of answer?
Yeah, yeah,
Hmm?
yeah, yeah.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. If anyone, yes.
Just kind of out of curiosity, what made you go into the games industry from the start? Like, what was there anything tangible that made you go like, oh, this seems like a cool job? Because you also done art and programming, right, before
Yes.
landing in level design.
Yes.
But like games, what sort of led you to games?
That's very. I think it was when I was like 12, 13 years old. I saw like an indie game, because my perception of games were always like Battlefield and things like that, and I thought that that was impossible to make because it looked so complicated and realistic. And then I saw this one indie game, I think it's called Omori, and I was like, oh, this is only one person, and this is so artsy. You can do whatever you want when making games, and that sort of inspired me to get going. So then I started out with pixel art, but yeah, art wasn't really my thing. And then I thought programming was the only way to like secure a job in the game industry. And then we had like a small course that was level design. I was like, ah, this is perfect. It's technical, artsy, and design. So yeah.
Yeah.
When you went to school, did you get support from your family or from your immediate community, or were they a bit skeptical? What was the context and the frame?
I got support when I told them about programming. They were like, "Oh, but you're so artsy and social. Are you sure?" And and I was like, "Oh, you can't be that." And I'm a programmer. But yeah, I got great support. But then when I started level design, it's very hard to explain, as I told, what we really do. So my family kind of still think I'm a programmer. When they describe me to their friends, they always start off with like, "Do you know who PewDiePie is? He play those games. Yeah, she works with them." And they thought I created like Fortnite or anything. So yeah, I got great supportive parents on that.
In school, they have us work in a very fast pace in order to prepare us for the industry. How do you feel working at IO comparatively? How's pacing been? Has it been as fast paced and stressful as it was in school, or better?
I think school is definitely way more stressful. And one thing for that is that we have kind of like a flat hierarchy, and we don't have any producers or game designers in our case. Now, when you work out in the industry, we have people whose job is to like manage and decide design and things like that. So I just can focus on level design. So in that part, it's less stressful, but it's also more serious, and you really want to perform your best. So it's like the best of both worlds, a little bit. Yeah, worst of worst worlds. I don't know. That's my answer.
Team, and if you work directly with them. So what's your relationship with
If I have level designers in my team,
graphic designers?
graphic designers.
That's Twitch.
As in artist, yeah, I work very closely with environment art and then also character art, of course. But we have a good collaboration with environment art because they're supposed to make our spaces pretty and also want to make it more readable. So we have a lot of good collaboration.
That's for the online.
Thank
viewers.
you.
Okay, then if we don't have any questions remaining from the audience, yeah.
Could you just ask one? So you talk about you work with say like environment artists and graphic designers and I guess also programmers. So how do you so if you're a level designer, do you feel like you're in the middle
Yes.
in a good sense or in a negative sense? So how do you figure out who makes which kind of decisions or who has which call or how does that actually work?
So, that was a complicated question. Yeah, I definitely feel, even in school, that level design is sort of in the middle of everything. That's why it's important to know each discipline, so you know who to ask for what, to not like waste your time or knowing what's possible. So I think when coming out to the industry, it will go quite fast when you know who does what and who should you ask and that kind of stuff. It's often that the level designer is required also to talk a lot. That was something I didn't expect. Like we're expected to present things, pitch things, kind of being like a salesperson. That really scared me in the start. But yeah, you get used to it. But when I signed up as a level designer, I didn't expect that at all. So yeah.
I also have a question. And by the way, amazing presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
My question is, so obviously you're kind of fresh in the industry. You've been through the whole shebang, right? Before entering the industry, and I'm assuming you're still learning. Can I just ask you, what is the latest thing you have learned from your day-to-day job? If you can give an example without disclosing much.
Yeah, I don't want to break an NDA. I have to think of it. The latest things that I've learned. I'm trying not to mention anything within the game. I think it's this whole presentation thing that LDs are expected to be good communicators. Like it's not required, but it's very good if you are. So that's something that I've been trying to work on more. In the start, I was very shy, but then I quickly came up on my feet and just tried. It was a lot of failures and awkward moments, but yeah, I think that's important.
If you were to give one tip to a future level designer on how to present the best to their colleagues or to the rest of their team, what would it be?
Show how excited you are by the design. Like if you don't like it, they will also be convinced that yeah, it's probably not the best. But if you yourself have made something that you're proud of and excited about, then you should show that when letting them playtest.
I think it's a continuing from Jesper's question, how like with the communication with the art department and the designers. So as as a department, as level designers, do you expect to give you like a concept, a drawn concept, or in 3D that you can see the assets placed in the game, so you can take that and follow it, or you are kind of in contact every once in a while, and I don't know, with the art director or someone, and kind of show you on the screen, and be a tedious work? Like, how does this communication works?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have we communicate all the time, but at bigger companies we have like a concept artist, and the concept artist kind of convey what the art direction wants, and then we get all these pictures, images, talk a bit with environment art, what they think, They make their kit on the side. Meanwhile, we block out, and we kind of trying to match the mood with the shapes. And then after that, if we follow metrics correctly, it should be pretty easy for environment to just take our space and do their thing and make it look good. And then we look at it together, and it's ultimately up to direction if they feel like, yeah, this is good or not good. A lot of things like buildings, it's very collaborative. Like I, as a level designer, could like architecture is it's this bridge because it's so art driven at the same time, and as a designer I have my needs, so we kind of have to meet in the middle on that thing. So sometimes we block out together.
One more question.
Hmm?
When do you feel like your job has become tedious or you don't really can express your creativity? Because I guess like people have their vision, but also you want to be creative in that and want to suggest some space architecture, for example.
Yeah.
And kind of elevate. And how do you like control this conflict of ideas?
I feel like I'm the least productive or kind of bored in my work when I have no direction or when I have very little direction. It's very nice to get this framework because then we both know what's expected and I can suggest from that. But when I get given very, I don't know, bare direction, it's very hard to create something that I think they want. So it's actually, I think it's person to person, but the more I get, the easier it's for me to be creative and suggest things.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any more questions in the room or online? No? Then thank you again
Thank
for
you.
this great talk, and give her a big hand.